everyone, and welcome back to my channel True Crime and Trials, where I discuss true crime and trials. My name's Lindsay, and I think I heard someone say Bob Durst, so I'm going to oblige and I'm going to carry on with the Bob Durst trial because, why not? So next up is Ricki Ring. She was roommates with Susan at UCLA, and they remained very close friends even though they didn't stay in close contact with each other. Ricki confirms the same as what other friends have said of Susan, and that she was very high maintenance. And then she is asked to describe what Susan's personality was like, and she says that she was quirky, brilliant, intense and funny, but also manipulative. Ricki did fall out with Susan a couple of times, one of them being because Ricki wouldn't loan Susan any money. Another was because Ricki wanted to try her hand at screenwriting, and that was Susan's thing, so she wasn't happy about that either. She had loaned her a few thousand, never got it back. Susan never told her that she got any money from Bob. Susan introduced her to Bob, and Susan told her that Bob was extraordinarily rich. At one point, Susan discussed with Ricki how lovely it would be to have Bob's baby. Could you imagine a little Bob Durst running around somewhere? But Ricki thinks Susan said that for financial reasons and not romantically. I mean, it's sounding more and more that Susan was extremely money motivated. I know she was in, hard times, but Ricki met Bob at UCLA in the 60s, and she says Bob kind of mumbled. She did meet him again a few times after. She did speak to him again, but he just mumbled, so she doesn't really have much to say about him. Ricki and Susan discussed Kathy's disappearance, and Susan said to her that she was shocked, surprised and amazed at NYPD for not doing a thorough investigation, and she was also shocked that Bob had thrown out all Kathy's belongings not long after. And also when Susan went out with Bob a few weeks later for dinner or lunch or whatever, he never once mentioned Kathy. Ricki stopped her from saying anything else at that point because she was a lawyer at the time. She stopped her talking because she thought that Susan was going to tell her that Bob had a hand in Kathy's disappearance. She didn't want to know. It would have put her in a very difficult position, so Susan never brought it up again. But she says Susan did imply to her that Bob was responsible for Kathy's disappearance. I mean, she implied it, but, it's... After Susan's murder, Ricki called the police and told them that Susan wasn't murdered by the mob, it was Bob. But Ricki did this anonymously. She still didn't want any part in this. So when Ricki found out that Susan could have possibly called the medical school pretending to be Kathy, it struck her because of what Susan had said in that call about the diarrhea. Because when they were at UCLA together, Susan would announce she'd had a diarrhea episode, and she did that quite a lot. So Ricki found that very suspicious that diarrhea had been used in that phone call. The cross-examination, to reiterate, Susan never told her that Bob was responsible for Kathy's disappearance, nor did she tell her she called the medical school. This was just purely speculation and feeling from Ricki. Ricki hadn't spoken to Susan since 1993 until her death, and she didn't go to her funeral, which, I always find sad because, they used to be good friends. They'd fallen out, and then she was murdered, and it was, leaving a friendship like that, it must be really hard to deal with. So the next witness is Richard Markey. Now, he met Susan in 1988 at the Writers Guild strike, and he met her in line at the picket outside CBS Studios. After that, they struck up a friendship and stayed in loose contact after that. Richard was under the impression from what Susan had said to him that Susan had put everything into the play that she did with Paul, and both financially and emotionally. And remember from Paul, he said she didn't put anything into it, financially, that is. When asked to describe Susan's personality, he says she was unusual, very smart, quite personable, very knowledgeable about the world, and had a very curious mind. Richard says she wasn't always an easy person to have as a friend because sometimes she was overly dramatic. Sometimes she got into very dark moods and almost all the time was very anxious about certain things like heights. He wouldn't say she was needy, but he thinks she relied on her friends for support. Now, you could interpret that as being needy. Whenever Richard went to Susan's home in Benedict Canyon, he says that he would always call ahead. Now, a lot of them have said this. Even if Susan knew he was coming, he still had to call. Then when he arrived, he would knock on the door and she would go up to the window, pull back the curtain and look to see if it was him or not. She would then come to the door, say hello, and he would have to say who it was, and then she would unlock the door and open it. This was something she always did. Again, he says she was extremely security conscious. He says he doesn't think Susan would open the door for anyone she didn't know. He says he would describe her as having a phobia about things like that. The last time he saw Susan alive, now this is really sad. They had dinner together and then they saw a movie that was right next door to the restaurant. He can't remember the day or the year, but he knows it was immediately before Susan died, so it must have been December. Now, Mr. Balian provides him with proof of when it was, and it was 22nd of December 2000. So he was literally the last person to spend time with Susan. He says that Susan said to him once that she knew things that no one else knew, but he doesn't think the conversation went any further than that. And today he says he doesn't know what it was about, but according to a police interview he did in 2001, he told police that Susan had said to him that she thinks she's the only person who knows what happened, but Richard doesn't remember, remember it regarding Bob and Kathy. Cross-examination. The last night Richard was out with Susan, she didn't mention to him that Bob was coming to see her, which was very odd because we know from previous witness testimony that she was excited Bob was coming out for the holidays. They were going to go out and everything, so it was odd that she didn't mention it. You can see that. I don't know. See, what came into my head was she scared to say that Bob was coming? Had he threatened her? That why she didn't say anything? Or was he not coming? Richard also told law enforcement in his interview that Susan had told him that Bob was innocent, but he doesn't recall that. So we don't know. The redirect. On the day of Susan's memorial service, Bob didn't go. People didn't want him there because of a media circus type thing. So Bob met up with Richard and another of Susan's close friends for lunch, and Richard says that Bob didn't seem concerned about what had happened to Susan. He was more focused on the investigations that were going on in New York. So there we go. Another couple of friends with Susan confirming everything we already know about Susan, how highly security conscious she was, and she wouldn't have let anyone in that house that she didn't know. So there we go. I'll be back with more in more videos. So until then, bye for now.